Dave Reed, Ray Wilkinson, and Joey Gallo.
Welcome into the NSFW Dynasty podcast. We are back after a bit of a hiatus. Life, work, holidays get in the way. Some technical difficulties on the first try on this podcast. We're doing it again, but happy to see Ryan and Joe back in the podcast booth. What's going on?
That was a nice intro there, Dave. Almost like you had a little practice.
Take two, guys. Take two.
It's actually pretty remarkable how awkward it is to do it a second time after you've already done it the first time.
I know. I was already committed. I was like, my head's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're back right in time for the fantasy playoffs. Hopefully most of our listeners are in the playoffs, so we can help you out. Hopefully win your league.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous that it's already playoff time. It's kind of wild how it seems like 5 minutes ago the season was starting and it's been 14 weeks. So ridiculous, but we've still got the best couple weeks of the season to go and we're going to finish strong.
That's right. How are you guys doing in your leagues? How many playoffs did you guys make? I know in our league, I am the only one on this pod not in the playoffs, which is fine. I've been trying to lose for a long time, and I almost ended up in the playoffs, and I did not want to be there. But I know, Ryan, you started finishing strong. Joe, you kind of fell in, but Chase made you officially get the win to get into the playoffs. But how are you guys feeling in the rest of your leagues?
Yeah, I went 2 for 2. I'm in playoffs in a redraft league and our dynasty league. So hoping to keep it going.
Yeah, my redraft teams this year were poor. I missed the playoffs in all 3 of my redrafts, and I came in second to last, and dead last in 3. And it's honestly. I mean, I know exactly what the issue was. I'm not going to beat myself up in the podcast for it, but I think next year we're going to have to take a different and more attentive approach to waivers. But yeah, so unfortunately, but then in our league, yeah, I'm in the playoffs. I'm not loving my chances this week, but in our other Superflex Dynasty, which I've talked about before, where I have Allen and Burrow and a couple studs, I'm the number 1 seed going into the playoffs again there, and my team's looking strong, so hopefully we'll be able to lock down another championship in that league. We'll see. Dave's team is pretty strong there. That'll be a tough out, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't have the quarterback depth that you have. Allen and Burrow this year are deadly duo, but I am pretty deep at running back and wide receiver, so hopefully that can carry the way. I got Herbert and a lot of trash at the superflex position, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, this is our league is actually the only one I pretty much missed out on. I have a couple other dynasty leagues that are salary based. I have 4 there, 2 of them I'm the 1 seed, and actually one Joe and I are the co-managers on 1 seed there, and then missed on the other 2. But overall, I made most of the playoffs, so it should be a good time of year here. So let's get geared up here.
Dave, counting co-managers, how many teams do you manage here? I feel like we just heard 10 teams.
Yeah, so I only have I have 2 redrafts and the Megla Bowl league that is technically redraft. But then on Sleeper, I have 2 true dynasty teams that I'm my own manager, and then there's 4 of this other league where it's all based on salaries. This guy Zach does a great job at being the commissioner for those leagues. That was actually the first dynasty league I got into with Joe, and there's 4 in there. Those are honestly pretty low touch because there's not many transactions you can do, and they're 16 team leagues, some of them. But so I'm in 4 of those, and then I co-manage with Ray, who also runs the Mega Bowl, on I think 3 leagues, and then he has these experimental leagues that are on my sleeper. So my sleeper has a ton of leagues. I honestly only care about half of them, but I do co-manage a couple with him that are pretty fun as well. So, but I'm the second when you're a co-owner or a co-manager, there's a leading manager and a backup manager. I'm the backup manager on those ones that I'm with Ray for sure.
Nice.
But it's a lot. But that's how I get the content. I get every angle.
Dedicated. I
get to feel every player. I change my opinions. I don't stay biased, but we move forward.
Yeah.
But we're going to be successful this year. We got this. But diving in, we got some news to catch up on. It's been a bit, so we got some injuries. Some of these may have happened about 2 weeks ago, but I think they're still important to kind of run through. So quickly running through some of the quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell, weird injury. Looked like he was done for the year. I think he got air casted, but it turns out just bruised his knee and actually could potentially play this week. So that was quite the change there. But Minshew is already done for the year as well. So if Aiden does miss this week, it would probably go Ritter. Derek Carr fractured his hand and concussed, probably done for the year. So it's either Rattler or Hayner, I think, that would be playing. Honestly, the Saints are just like a dumpster right now of all the injuries that they got going on the offensive side. Justin Herbert sprained his ankle, but he should play. And my man Trevor Lawrence, nasty hit, got concussed 2 weeks ago and is done for the year. So Mac Jones is running it out there. But Brian Thomas Jr. is still kind of getting some value there. But any quick thoughts on the quarterbacks before I jump into running backs? Not really.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing there really of note other than
Herbert's the only thing that could maybe have an impact there, in my opinion. But
yeah,
he seems okay.
Yeah, he'll play. Derek Carr kind of looked like he was like crying like a baby on the field. It was just like the ugliest reaction to an injury I've seen. Yeah.
He's just not. So I don't like watching him play.
I don't
He's just not enjoyable.
Yeah. But, I mean, I guess it kind of matters a little bit for MVS because they had a good connection, and I can't really say like confidently that Rattler or Hayner can connect with MVS for the deep ball the way that Carr was. So any hope that you had with playing MVS the rest of the season, probably a little bit less now.
Yeah, that was literally us. We had him. We started him the last 2 weeks, and he's definitely got to go straight to the bench now.
Yeah, you can't rely on him. To running backs, running backs have actually been pretty resilient most of the year, but we're starting to see some attrition pop up this past week for sure, but also a couple weeks ago. So one of the big ones, Christian McCaffrey, 2 weeks ago, done for the year. I think it's a PCL in the snow game. He got hurt. And then Jordan Mason owners who took over that game, anyone who had him was excited. Like, all right, I got a top 10 running back. Nope. He also hurt his ankle and was done for the year, which was a nice surprise. You had about a 2-hour window to ship him off as soon as he knew some people were able to, but he's done for the year. So then backup Isaac Guerrero came in, who also now got hurt with a foot sprain and is very much up in the air for this upcoming week. So if he can't go, Patrick Taylor potentially, because he's the fourth running back there, but he's also a special teamer. He's kind of just a guy. He's just a jag. I wouldn't want to have to rely on him. But Izzy Abanikanda, formerly of the Jets.
Jets legend.
Jets legend, fast runner. He got picked up, was inactive last week, but he could potentially get some carries. Bucky Irving, who has been lighting the world on fire this past week, early in the game, injured his back and left the game, did not return. Questionable play this week, still has a shot, but that gets an uptick. And you saw Rachaad White get a ton of work and get all the value, kind of what he had last year, and Sean Tucker got some touches. Breece Hall this week, 14 with an injury, not trending very well this week either. So Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen would get a lot of those touches, and Isaiah Davis, he will actually look a bit better of the two. And then finally, this one is real brutal. But Jonathan Brooks, you waited 10 weeks for him to finally get in the field after tearing his ACL. Gets out, and now he re-tore that same ACL, and he's done for the year. Probably going to miss pretty much, if not all, of next year as well. So, and they re-signed Chuba Hubbard to an extension there. So it's kind of his value is really plummeting in Dynasty. But what are you guys' view on this? You hate to see that on Brooks.
Yeah, that was rough. And I texted you like right after seeing it, where like he went down, he wasn't touched, he limped off, he couldn't get off the field. You could just tell it was like his knee, he was grabbing at the back of it. It was just an ugly kind of scene. Yeah. So unfortunate. The Bucky Irving one is a tough one because honestly, a lot of people have been counting on Bucky who are in the playoffs. He's been quite valuable over the last 5 to 7 weeks. So it'll be a pretty interesting situation if he can't fully go this week. Obviously, that puts Rachaad White in a very advantageous position, like you said, to continue to produce a ton. So we'll have to see what it's going to look like for Bucky this week. It seems like it's just his back. I thought it was a different injury 2 weeks ago, but it seems like it was the back 2 weeks ago. Originally 2 weeks ago when he came out, they said it was his hip. And then anyhow,
these are all old men injuries.
It ended up being his back.
Yeah.
So that's why when I saw that he had a back injury last week, I'm like, oh, I guess he's got a second injury now. But turns out it was just the back all along. So who knows? I think it's like a tightness thing. So like his back just kind of tightened up last game. So I guess it'll be a roll of the dice to throw him out there in a playoff matchup this week. If his back ends up tightening up again and you get nothing, that's going to be unfortunate.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, definitely not what you like to see with the guys you're relying on. And then, the 49ers backfield has just been a mess. I don't really know what you do there. I think,
gotta avoid it, I think.
If you don't have anyone else, you obviously start them, but it's tough because you don't really know who's going to get the carries, and it's kind of been all over the place.
Yeah, if Garendo gets back on, I think you can roll with him. But other than that, hopefully you have a bye and that you can wait and see how things shake out.
Yeah, like Schluter in this league.
Yeah, so hopefully he can get a sense of like what to do there.
Yeah.
Moving to wide receivers, not as many bigger names here, but we still have some players in deeper leagues. Demarcus Robinson, AC joint sprain, questionable for this week. Lad McConkey missed, I believe, last week with a knee injury. But I do think he's trending to potentially play for week 15, but keep an eye on that. He's been awesome, but he does take a beating. I don't know if he can handle that type of usage long term, but he's been great for a rookie. Romeo Dobbs has a concussion, missed the past 2 weeks, but he has a shot to potentially play this week. Cedric Tillman also has a concussion, missed the past 2 weeks, but he's also progressing much slower. So week 15 is very much in question right now. And George Pickens finally, hamstring. He missed last week. He's questionable for this week. He's also just kind of an idiot, but he has been doing very, very well on the field when he's out there. So that is someone I know a lot of teams have been relying on throughout the season and would love to get back on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I admittedly don't have the full context on the Pickens situation, but it seemed also like they were just being cautious with him. Like maybe that was, I don't know if that was Tomlin, like maybe covering him up a little bit for, I don't know, but it seemed like that was the impression I got, where they were just like, yeah, he's more injured than we thought, so we're just going to take it slow with him. So yeah, like you said, I don't think you're really counting on having him for this week and maybe even next week either. So unfortunate.
Yeah, I think McConkey, like you said, it's been great, and probably a lot of teams relying on him too. So hopefully he plays this week.
Yeah, he's been a monster. He's just making great catches and constantly open. So definitely want to see him back on the field. Finally rounded out with some tight ends. Taysom Hill a couple of weeks ago, tore his ACL, done for the year after blowing up and looked like someone who could potentially help some teams win a title. We're going to be without him. Again, the injuries in the Saints have just been brutal. Will Disley, who honestly, if you've been relying on it, he has been useful, but hopefully you don't have to be relying on him, but he's going to be out multiple weeks with a shoulder. Dallas Goedert has a knee injury. He's I think, believed done for the year. So Calcaterra, I hopefully pronounced that correctly. He actually gets some good looks. I think he scored a touchdown this past week. So if you're desperate, you could definitely toss him out there. And some positive news, it sounds like Dalton Kincaid, who has missed, I think, like 4 or 5 weeks now, should be back in week 15, it looks like. So finally getting some help with the tight end position there.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, well, Goddard, right? Like I think he's going to be back, but he just won't be back for fantasy. Yeah. So Calcaterra, I mean, he caught a touchdown last week. I think that's going to be the deal with him.
Yeah. Streaming tight ends, that's really the deal.
Yeah. What about Kincaid? What would you do? Would you throw him in your playoff lineup this week?
No, he has not been good.
I think he can, right?
Yeah.
Even if he's back.
Yeah, he's been a bit of a disappointment.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think he takes, reflecting back on this week's Buffalo game, one of my takeaways was, it's nice to see that Amari Cooper is getting the full, wide receiver one load of targets. It'll be interesting to see if Kincaid coming back takes, 3 to 5 of those targets away from Cooper. But I would not count on him. Even, I mean, maybe if Dawson Knox got hurt, but I don't know. Not great vibes around Dalton Kincaid.
He had so many
agree.
opportunities earlier this year with lesser competition
Yeah.
and just did not show up. I can't imagine now with more competition is going to be better for him. So, yeah, tough there. And not an injury, but I didn't have this showed up, but I know it'll make the podcasters happy. Kadarius Tony cut again. So, guys,
This might be that. This honestly might be his last.
That was probably it. Yeah.
He is. If you're getting cut by the Browns, like you're pretty bad at this point.
Yeah.
And then
he muffed that punt. But did you see? Did you see the only other snap he played in the game?
It
was the previous punt where he got an unsportsmanlike penalty for throwing the ball at one of the opposition guys.
I wish there's got to be a way to like calculate it, probably on lost yardage or something. But has there ever been a player who's done more damage to their team per touch? Than Tony ever has. Like, it's crazy. Like, the Chiefs lost that game because of him. So, like, he literally has lost teams' games so many times. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's not the sharpest of the knives in the drawer.
He had that one good game against Dallas his rookie year, and everyone just still holds on to that. I was like, yeah, but he's electric with it. I'm like, he's he. Oh man! But talking about some crappy team. Tommy DeVito is going to be back starting for the Ash Cheek Giants this week, but we're trending towards. We have the second pick right now, and trending towards potentially that first pick. I do believe was it the Raiders with the first pick? They play the Jags at some point, I think, in a week or two. So hopefully the Raiders can sneak a win or something there, and the Giants get that first pick. You got Bryce Young, who actually has been looking good. Has almost won like 3 or 4 straight. It hasn't got them all, but has been looked good. Jameis and Judy are dominating together. A.J. Brown seems very frustrated with Jalen Hurts right now because Jalen Hurts is not a good passer, which I said in our chat. I'm sure we can get into more later. Already touched upon Josh Allen and Burrow, but also want to just throw out Jamar Chase is far and away the wide receiver 1 on the year. Just absolutely dominating. But Puka this past week is like, he just looks incredible too. And I'm very interested to see how high people value Puka, if he really has risen to that like top 4 or 5 player tier. But those are just a couple quick hitters around the league. Want to see if you guys have any additional thoughts or want to elaborate on any of that.
I just got to make a comment on Josh Allen, obviously having the single greatest QB performance of all time.
Crazy.
It was awesome to watch. Clearly the number 1 overall pick.
Yes. You made the right call there.
Yeah, I don't think that Jalen Hurts is as bad a passer as you're giving him discredit for. But I don't think he's like a great passer either. So, I mean, he adds value in a lot of other ways, and he doesn't need to necessarily be a great passer in that offense because they have such a dynamic rushing attack. Mm-hmm. But from a non-fantasy and just from like a pure NFL perspective, I will be interested to see what the response is this week to some of the criticisms or the complaints that A.J. Brown had, and if he throws the ball downfield more and how it looks and whatnot. So we shall see. I'll be watching and tuning and frankly hoping that he throws quite a few deep touchdowns because I'm going to need all the points I can get.
Yeah. We'll see.
I saw while we're talking about Jalen Hurts and probably not the statistic that someone who just purchased Hurts in a dynasty should be sharing, but it's just like an unbelievable stat. Saquon Barkley has been tackled on the 1.
Oh, I saw this. Yeah,
11 times this season, which is the most of any running back in football, and 10 of those 11 times Jalen Hurts scored the touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's just unfortunate. Well, it's unfortunate for Barkley. It's overinflating Hurts' value, I think. And it's pretty like if the Eagles had anybody else playing quarterback for them, like Barkley, who's already the RB1, would be
huge.
Yeah. ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's the crazy part. Hurts has been doing that for a couple of years now, but
Same thing happened with
Barkley,
Swift. How many times did Swift get tackled
yeah,
on one last year?
yeah, it feels like whoever their running back is, he gets tackled on the one. But
That's part of their contract is you do not score a touchdown. I mean,
Hurts has to score this
we
touchdown.
get paid royalties every time they say tush push, so you need to get down on one.
Yeah, but seriously, Barkley would be having an unbelievable year if he got those touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's part of the Hurts thing too, as you mentioned. Like that, I think I say he's a bad passer. Like over, obviously they're winning games and it's working there, but in fantasy, I feel like his value is like people view him as like a top end elite quarterback, and it's not that he's not putting up the production, but it's just so contingent upon his rushing touchdowns. Um, 2 years in a row, it's working. I just like I have a hard time believing that's something you're gonna forever be able to rely on is getting all those tush push touchdowns there. And also, like, how long can a quarterback's body hold that up and doing that type of workload? Because it's a lot on your body. Most quarterbacks can't do that. So, like, that's where I'm like, I have concerns long term because he's never cracked 4,000 passing yards. He's never cracked 25 passing touchdowns. It's all predicated upon these rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, the rushing, it's the touchdowns, but it's also like the rushing yardage, right? Like he averages
Just
like
get
40
good,
to
yeah.
50 rushing yards a game.
Mhm.
And this year specifically, right? Like there's hardly any garbage time for Philly. Like they manage a game where they win like you know, games that are on the mid to lower scoring side.
Mhm.
And like what have they lost? Like 2 or 3 games all season. So it's just like not often that he's dealing with the same garbage time that a lot of these other quarterbacks do have to like inflate the passing numbers. So I'm just trying to provide whatever counterpoints I can.
Yeah. Again,
I mean,
not bad.
let's put it this way, right? Like if you were just drafting um uh Murray versus Hurts, you would prefer Hurts even though Murray is 100% the better passer.
Yeah, Murray's also an idiot too, and I'm sorry. So yeah,
Right.
No, I would for fantasy. I would take
yeah,
Hurts
I would
over Murray
definitely
for
take
sure.
Hurts.
But like to your guys' point, right? Like I that actually just kind of like proves the point that more than 60 or 70% of Hertz's fantasy value comes on the ground.
Yeah,
So health is obviously a huge concern there, and who knows what kind of offense that I mean, hopefully they keep that Kellen Moore offense for some time in the future because it works and they score well and he gets a lot of opportunities. So
yeah,
I guess we'll see.
we'll see. But with that, we'll see. We're gonna jump in to see if a little sense of other players that we want to see where the value is trending and what we are looking to do with these players rolling into the offseason now that the regular season has kind of ended. Some of these might be more questionable players or more difficult to value, but I think it's good discussions because a lot of players I'm not sure what to do with, whether I have them on my team or if there's someone I should target. But Ryan, I know you got a couple names you want to throw out here, so why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, so I got a couple guys I just want to get a little value check on. Let me know if you guys would buy them low, sell them high, or hold them if you had them. First one, we're going to start with a guy who hasn't played this year really. Rashid Rice. He had a monster 3 games to start the season, then obviously needed surgery and missed the rest of the season. He's currently still involved in that civil lawsuit. I think I saw the trial date is scheduled for June 2025, so who knows what's going to happen there. Treese did draft Worthy, but we all know how Dave feels about Worthy, so
We also
maybe
know that
that's irrelevant.
statistically he stinks.
Yeah.
He's honestly one of the worst wide receivers. He's not good. That was my best take of the year.
Yeah. They also traded for Hopkins. Not that should have too much of an impact, but his dynasty value has held for the most part. He's still ranked as a top 20 dynasty wide receiver. If you look on Keep Trade Cut, he's number 16 right now. Are you selling him high with the issues and his value holding, or are you buying him low, assuming he's okay in the long run and jumps into the top 10, top 5 dynasty wide receivers? Or are you just holding him and seeing what happens?
I have thoughts on it, but so what I'm thinking is I would kick the can if you can actually get him low. Like you can get him for like a second and maybe like a lesser player. I would probably take that upside shot, um, but I don't think I would be giving up a first or anything for him myself at this point. There's just a lot of questions, obviously, with health, legal situation. He was dominating for sure, and I'm not worried about Worthy at all going forward anymore. But I still think this offense needs to get like a true outside receiver, and he's more of like a big slot, um, which can provide a lot of value there. I think he was getting a lot of value earlier this season because there was absolutely no other option. And I do think at some point they will have to get another option. And if that happens, then he'll still be very good. It just like, I think he was before the injury, he was in like top 7 dynasty wide receivers. And I have a hard time getting to that level. But I don't know, Joe, where you're at.
Yeah. I felt like he was a sell this year from a contending team standpoint, just because there was a lot of implied value there because of the way he started the season and the fact that he was like injured and missing the rest of this season, and also like his status for the beginning of next season is slightly uncertain, and also like
it's a lot of ends.
Yeah, like so many ends.
So
like
many ends.
and like not the least of which is a lot of these NFL teams, their offense, like the way it functions, the scheme, but also just like who it runs through and whatnot, doesn't exactly stick from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
Like even with the Chiefs, right? Like they were running through Kelsey for the last couple of years, and then the beginning of this year it was all kind of like jumbled up, and it was basically running through Rice, and
now it's Noah Gray.
Yeah, and he's on like he's rookie deals are 4 years for Rice.
Yep.
This is his second year. Next year is going to be his third year, and we don't really know what's going to be going on with the legal stuff and whatnot. And who knows if they're going to end up paying him. They didn't pay Tyreek. Like wide receiver isn't a position that they generally pay up for. So there's a lot of reasons to potentially try to capitalize on the name and what he's done so far. So I'd probably put him more in the sell if you can. I wouldn't necessarily be trying to acquire him, or let's put it this way, like I wouldn't be looking to like pay up to get him on my team. If he was a throw in to make a deal happen, like that, like great.
Yeah.
I agree. I think if you have him, I would almost hold him unless you can try to get someone to maybe overpay a little bit with a first or something. But I don't think he's a buy low at this point. There's too much risk.
I think actually, Joe, what I think the best thing is that you package him with something else and try to get it like an elite guy. Because I think there's a lot. I feel like most of the dynasty community still is like pretty high on him and sees like all the upside and is willing to overlook the downside. But there's just so much risk, and if I can use that player to get someone who's like a certified stud, I would probably do that. So I would like package him with another player and like really try to level up. That might be the best move.
Yeah. All right, and another guy who's now done for the rest of the season, Christian McCaffrey. I feel like we have to talk about him here. You're either a believer and you aren't concerned with the injury history and he's a buy low, or you're over dealing with all the missed time and you try to sell him while you can. For reference, before the season on Keep Trade Cut, he was like 7,300 points. He's down to less than 4,000 now. He's in the same range as guys as like Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, and James Conner. That's where he's being valued right now. So you buying low, hoping he turns it around, or are you done?
I'm for Dynasty. I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out too. I think
his contract with San Francisco, the extension that they gave him was 2 years.
Yeah, so I think
last year, so he's got 1 year left plus an option.
Yeah, I think he could potentially go 2 more years after this year. I think it's how it lands.
Yeah. I mean, I acquired him in one of our keeper redraft leagues, but that is with the assumption that I'm going to have him for next year. And then, probably look to find another option. Like I do think there's an above average chance that that he'll have a good season next year, right? Like it's not like him missing the majority of a season due to injury. Like this year is like a new thing for him.
Yeah,
no, that's the thing.
And he bounced back and he had the season he did 2 years ago. Like it's in the range of outcomes for next year. I'd be willing to kind of like bet on it to an extent. I obviously did. But for Dynasty, right? Like it's tough to like. He might be someone that you try to acquire, like if you feel like you're on the fringe of a championship, but like in a rebuild type scenario, or if you're not like like a tip top contender, I would be avoiding.
He certainly carries value. Like again, when he's healthy, I still think he'll be a game changer. And yeah, if you're contending or you're in Dynasty, we all need running backs, and if you need to level up, you can go there. But I don't think I could sell the farm for him. Like early in the year, you would have had to. Um, you have to be like pretty close and push for it, but you also can't be a team where if he gets hurt, you're screwed. He needs to be like almost like a depth piece upside, because the way I view him is kind of like a 3-leg parlay. It's not out of the range; it doesn't hit, but like I'm viewing it as hitting at like a 30% chance here, maybe lower. But if it hits, you're going to be in great shape because going forward, like there's just so much risk, and if you are relying on that, like if you were betting and you were like at parlay and you were betting your savings, that's too much. I ain't doing that. But if it's like, well, chump change is on the side, okay, I'll take that shot on him.
I would say the only thing that I would say, in response, I think it's a slightly higher likelihood that he hits next year. I would say maybe more like 50-50 or 60-40.
I think next year he'll hit. I'm talking more of
Yeah.
like you're investing long-term assets, and next year is like your only shot for it for Dynasty. Redraft, I agree. Redraft, I feel a lot more because it's a 1-year shot.
Yeah, like I think that's pretty much what you're working with. And if you're talking about his value beyond next year, then yeah, I would say like sub 30%.
Yeah. But like when you're in Dynasty, you're thinking hopefully 2 years out, and that's the price you're going to have to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm even a little less optimistic than you guys. He went down. He was completely untouched. He's had a weird year all year with the injuries, and I don't know. I'm definitely out. I wouldn't be buying him. I'd be selling him if I could, but we'll see.
If obviously you could be in a bad spot at the end of this year if you were relying on him all year in Dynasty. So he might be a team that in a position where selling him might be the best move for you to kind of recoup the losses there.
Yeah, and I feel like if you have him, like hang on, and early next year, if you're in a position to compete, you hold and you try to stay along for the ride. If you're not, then you find the guy who's trying to compete and you recoup as much as you possibly can.
Oh, absolutely.
Because after, like, if he puts up a 30 spot in week 1, then all of a sudden he's going to be like skyrocketing back up there.
Yeah, that I definitely agree with. If you are going to sell him, you definitely wait. Now's not the time to sell him.
Not when you do it.
Yeah. All right, and then one more. I'm sticking with the injury histories here and switching to quarterback. We'll go with Tua. His value tanked after his concussion, but it's rebounded nicely, and he's kind of back to like his pre-injury value. Sort of same thing. Are you thinking there's too much risk with his injury history? Are you holding or buying low, assuming he can still be that top 10 Dynasty QB? And while we're talking about him too, we might as well throw Tyreek Hill in there, who is approaching 31 and has seen his value tank over the last 2 months. He's currently ranked as the Dynasty wide receiver 28. So, same situation there. Is that a buy low, or is his time kind of done?
I think I would rather try to buy Tyreek low, but I don't really love the idea. I'm personally not trying to roster either of them. I just don't want to take that kind of risk where one play could make the asset completely disappear forever. And that's pretty much what you're working with Tua, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, like he could make the decision to continue to keep coming back and playing after like another several concussions. Like it's not out of the range of outcomes. It seems like actually that's probably what he would do because he's kind of crazy. But with Tyreek, at least like I think you're getting. I think he's more valuable than the wide receiver 28 in Dynasty. And there's some kind of a range of outcomes where Miami gets another quarterback to like a functional backup. You would think they're going to have to prioritize that. And Tyreek could hold some value. So I would say Tua firmly out, 0%. Do I want him any shares? Tyreek, I could be compelled to buy low.
Yeah, I don't think I'm targeting either one of these guys. Doesn't mean I won't roster them. I'm always willing to kind of kick the can on like any players if there's like a value there. But I'm not going out of my way for targeting these players at all. And the issue is like I don't think you can. Tua seems hard to buy low on now because he's been performing well for what the risk associated to him is. Like I don't think those prices are going to be for what the owner has and what I think like a discount would actually mean. I just see too much of a gap. Um, like if you were in a startup, I think he's like a decent like later. If you skip quarterbacks into superflex early on, and he's like a little bit later, I think he's a decent target there. But yeah, I'm trying to avoid that. I would float these players. These are the type of players I would definitely float out because I do think there are useful assets. And again, certain teams may have like big holes that they need, and this is like the only options they can do to kind of fill it. So I'd float it out there. But in general, I don't want to go out of my way for these players. And there's just too much risk. Even Tyreek, like I know he got like kind of a weird extension. I don't know if it really added years, but he also has like been floating out that he may want to retire soon. So there's just a lot of risk long term for both these guys. I actually have Tyreek, and that's one of the salary leagues. Crazy salary for him. He's going to put me over the cap. I'm cutting him. I could re-sign him for cheaper, but he's an easy cut for me because I have him being paid as like a top 3 asset, and I don't think he's a top 3 wide receiver. I don't even know if he's a top 10 wide receiver next year. I think he can perform like it, but he hasn't done it that much this year to begin with. So I feel like it's going to be hard to rely on that next year.
Yeah, definitely a lot of risk. Don't see much changing for Hill, except he'll probably have a couple more kids by next year.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
he's dominating in that area.
Yeah. To your point, I don't see any scenario where he's drafted in the first 10 wide receivers off the board next year.
Yeah.
So maybe like numbered, but I could already off the top of my head very quickly name 7 or 8 guys who
easily. Yeah, one more. So like that's why I was like, it's tough. Like you, it's almost like you have. And I feel like it takes time for dynasty players when there's been a player who's been a top 10 wide receiver for so long to like really finally be like that guy's not top 10 anymore. Like it takes a while, especially because Tyreek's done it for so long.
Yeah, and guys kind of like retain their value a little bit, or they have like a renaissance of their value at the tail end of their career, like Devontae Adams during like last year, 2 years ago's Raiders year, or like AJ Green kind of did it for a while.
Yeah.
So maybe we see a little bit of that with Tyreek, but yeah.
What about you, Joe? Got any names for us?
I got a bunch of names. I'm going to throw them out. So I kind of just like when I was doing this to get the names, I just kind of took a piece of paper and I just like kind of wrote down like buy low, sell high, and hold, and just started like writing names in each of the bucket. I'm not going to say which bucket I'm reading. I'll just throw out some names and we'll see, and then I'll tell you. So first one I want to throw out there, which is actually an interesting one, is DK Metcalf, who I feel like there's been a considerable shift in his value just this season alone, where going into the season he was clearly the most valuable wide receiver on the team. Obviously JSN has ascended over the last couple of weeks to a point where I think you're probably I think DK is probably being undervalued just because of the current hype surrounding JSN. I also think that, and I meant to check this before the podcast, I'm going to check it on the fly right now, his contract situation. I think he's a free agent after this year, or has an out on the contract after this year. Confirming that right now. Potential out 2025. Yeah. So I don't know if he's on a different team and maybe a change of scenery for him, depending on I don't know. Like there's always the promise of a new situation with a lot of these wide receivers curious what you're doing with DK Metcalf.
I mean, I would say buy low. I know, Joe, you have him, and we tried to get you to throw him in our Hurts Murray trade. So, we liked him. I still think he's got a bright future. And like you said, even if it doesn't end up being on the Seahawks, it could end up being somewhere else. So I would buy him still.
Yeah, I've always liked DK. But the weird thing is that I also feel like I do need to readjust my view on him, because has he finished in the top 20, 10, 12 wide receiver? I feel like he's always in the teens.
Early in the season, I think he had like week 2, he was wide receiver 2. Week 3, he was 9.
But like
And
on a full season though, like
not
I'm
this
looking
year.
up. He's got his second year. He was a 6'7". Then he's been in half point 11, then 18, 16. Now he's 31. So like,
Yeah.
I think he got a reset. I would definitely target him because I think people might be too low on him, but I think he's more of a wide receiver too. And like that's kind of where I think we got to reassess his value at. Still think even at that production, he's a value based on where I think people are valuing him in trades. So I would definitely target him because I think he'll be useful. And he still has multiple years left, but yeah, I own him in dynasty leagues as well, and like I've traded him in some, and I still have him in others. I like him, but I've realized like I've been relying on him to be more than what he actually ends up putting out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I wrote him down in the buy low category, but now that we're talking about it, it just feels like if he does end up moving to a new team and a flashy opportunity, and that like inflates his potential value to a point where, you know, depending on where he goes, like obviously if he goes to somewhere like KC, you hold on, but you know, if he goes somewhere else where there's like the promise of a new and better opportunity, maybe you can capitalize and get a more locked in wide receiver 1 or RB1. It might be worthwhile to move on. All right. Another one I'm going to throw out there is injured player, somebody that is a little bit older, is having a little bit of a career renaissance this year. Not terrible injury, but unfortunate injury. It was tough to see. Chris Godwin. Curious if you guys are. He felt like somebody who was reaching kind of the peak of his value earlier this season, and then basically plummeted following his injury. But I think that the situation for him to score fantasy points will be still pretty solid next year. And I personally am pretty in on Godwin. Curious if you guys agree, what your thoughts are.
I think if I recall correctly too, I think this is a contract year for him.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so like I mean, because of that, I think there's a better chance he stays in Tampa Bay now because I think they'll be able to afford him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he was, like you said, he was, I think, a top 3 wide receiver before he got injured. Yeah, he was absolutely dominating. So, I think he's a great buy depending on what you can get him for. Maybe a little bit of risk because he's a little bit older and just had the injury, but if he returns to where he was the first half of this year, then he would be a huge buy low right now.
Yeah, he's had a couple injuries now, so that's like one of the things you're a little bit concerned about. But his style of play, he's like just a good route runner, and he's great out of the slot. And I think your career can extend a little bit longer as long as you're playing out of the slot, and that's what's been different this year when he was dominating. Is that he was getting a higher usage out of the slot, and I think had like McMillan on the outside, where 2 years ago they kept playing him on the outside, and that's just not where he thrives. When he had his like I think wide receiver 2 years because of a lot of the slot targets. So if I like the thought of him going back to Tampa Bay, playing with Baker, and potentially getting that same usage. So I would definitely be looking to see if that is someone you could potentially buy low on as well, knowing that there is like injuries are always a risk to see like what they're as they get older. But he's someone that I would be willing to roll the dice on and try to get. But I also will say, as someone who had him in a few other leagues that I co-managed in, he was definitely a piece that I've looked to when we're trying to level up before the deadline, use to try to get to win now. I was like, all right, this guy's not helping me. I got to just like level up. Hopefully someone sees on it. But in general, I do think he holds value going into next year.
I do kind of totally agree that his value is kind of predicated. I would be less willing to go in on him if he was on a different team.
Yeah, I agree. If he went somewhere else, I would be concerned based on usage and quarterback. He has to be coming out of the slot to really get that value.
All right, let's throw out Nick Westbrook. No, I'm just kidding.
Multiple firsts.
It's interesting, right? Like we talked about Chase Brown in a podcast recently. And I'm going to bring up Tyrone Tracy, who I actually think is like Chase Brown light right now. View them very similarly in their situation. And I've been like tentatively trying to acquire Tyrone Tracy in a couple different spots, but also knowing that they still have Singletary under contract for another 2 years. And, like they're still not a very good team right now. I don't know who's going to be playing quarterback next year. So like there's a lot of questions there. So curious what you guys think about Tyrone Tracy. And do you think there's a little bit of, I mean, it's obviously a risk beyond this year. And maybe Dave, you're a little biased because he's on your team, but
He's
Yeah, I was gonna say.
he's on a lot of my teams. I haven't been a lot of places.
I'll let
love Tracy.
I'll let Dave go first because I know that's his guy.
I love Tracy. I mean, there's risk because the team obviously he's a later drafted running back and he's an older running back. But I like him. I think he's going to be very good next year. Even on like a bad offense, he's still showing out right now. I can't imagine, no matter who the quarterback is next year, that it's a worse team, at least from an offensive perspective. So I like him. The only risk is that they invest in a top tier running back, which I think would be the dumbest move you could possibly do on the state of the team right now. So I think that percentage chance of that happening next year is low. It's happened in the past, but those teams had a lot more established pieces where the Giants almost look like an overhaul right now. So I'm not as concerned there. So I like him. I do think I don't know how low. So if you're buying him, you're not buying him because his value is low. You're buying him because you think his value is going to continue to rise.
Yeah.
And I do think it will continue to go up. I like him a lot, and he does look pretty explosive, and he can obviously catch the ball. So I'm a fan, but I am biased. I'm a Giants fan who owns tons of shares of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think your last point there is that you're buying hoping the value goes up is what gets me. I think for me, you'd have to pay too much to get him right now because his value is decently high. And there is a lot of risks with Singletary there, or they could bring someone in. And, I don't know. For me, I wouldn't go out and buy him right now based on where his current value is.
Yeah. Yeah, I had him more as a hold. So maybe that makes you feel better, Dave.
Yeah.
But
I'm keeping him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just feels like you're probably not going to want to take the risk to sell him for what his actual value would be in a trade right now, because you're forfeiting a lot of upside, and you probably don't want to actually try to acquire him. Well, maybe you do want to try to acquire him, but giving up what is actually required to get him is also a bit of a risk. So it depends on how lucky you're feeling.
Yeah, I feel like he's relatively safe to be a top 24 running back next year, with the upside of being more. I would probably right now feel comfortable saying he's in the 15 to 18 range, thinking where like redraft is next year. But again, off seasons can change things. So, and if you're buying him before free agency and the draft, there's a lot of risk there.
Yeah. And then just one other name that I'm going to throw out at the quarterback position, and I think the category this guy falls in is pretty obvious, but Sam Darnold. Are we all on board that this is? I mean, it's kind of like a little late now, but he just feels like the most obvious sell high candidate that there is. Not exactly sure what the right course of action for Minnesota is going to be, but I don't. It doesn't seem like they love him. Like it's just been weird vibes this whole season. He's been good and the team is good. I don't see them making a deep playoff run, and it feels like next year it's going to be McCarthy's team. Darnold's going to be moving on. So it feels like this is probably the best year of his career that we're witnessing right now, and he might be a good opportunity to sell, but just my take.
Yeah, I think the only thing with him is the situation because they have McCarthy. Otherwise, I would say he could almost be like a Baker Mayfield where he could retain a good amount of value going forward. The issue with him is like, is he going to have the full starting job next year, or are they really going to work in JJ and eventually give the job to him? If that happens, then he's 100% a sell high because, I mean, you could get a ton of value for him right now. If it doesn't, though, he could be that Baker type player that kind of turns it around and ends up being a pretty decent value for Superflex. But personally, right now, I would see what you could get and try to sell him. I just wouldn't say it's a 100% a sell in that he completely tanks value next year.
Yeah, it's weird because whenever I see a player that is universal so high, I almost think they're almost about buy low because people are pushing to get rid of them so much that they're just like so easily attainable because like it's so obvious that this guy's like a sell. And situation's really going to matter. But the one thing that like I don't think enough people have like talked about because everyone's like, yeah, they got JJ McCarthy, he's on a 1-year contract, he could go elsewhere. The Vikings could just franchise him and keep him one deal. He doesn't test free agency. They keep him there and see what happens with JJ McCarthy. And then you get another potentially good year out of Darnold and it stays in that system and stays with those weapons. And that doesn't seem to be like a path that most people talk about. But that's a very realistic, and if you're a GM, like a pretty savvy, smart move. And then you could trade him if you need to, and you see JJ being better midseason. So with that combination of things, I would see what the cost, if you needed like a second or third quarterback, what the cost potentially be. Because again, if people are looking to sell them, a lot of people start thinking like, I have to get rid of him in the next 3 months or I lose value completely. So you actually might be able to get him cheaper than what typical sell high values are. So there is a path and a realistic path for him to hold value. It's a gamble, but that's someone that if you're selling,
that's a good take.
but that's something I'd be like, yeah, maybe I will try to grab him if you can get him. Because some people may be like, yeah, I'll take him for like a second or 2 seconds. I'm like, all right, I don't have any quarterbacks. Maybe what am I going to do with these seconds? Maybe I'll shoot these over and I'll get a quarterback.
Yeah, no, that's a good take. I think the possibility of him being franchised is a good point. And, they roll the dice and they see what happens next year. And if things aren't, looking the way they look this year, then they go to McCarthy midway through the season or start working them in. But if they are, then maybe they move McCarthy and they sign Darnold to a long term.
Exactly. Yeah, McCarthy's on a rookie contract, so like this is when you have the financial flexibility to do something like that, where you overpay potentially a backup or not a long-term quarterback. But yeah, that's what I would at least look to do if I was a GM. I'm not though. I'm a podcaster. So.
Yeah, no, it is a great point. I feel like if you could go out and get him for a second or a little more than a second, like that almost is a solid buy right now.
Yeah, but I think in the offseason you might be able to do because I do think there's going to be skittish owners that like want to just recoup value before it evaporates.
Yeah,
fair point. All right, Dave, what do you got?
So I group my players based into similar type of storylines and of like where they are, and I want to see if you guys think that their value is trending the same way and what you would be doing with them. So these are 2 wide receivers, very similar skill sets, and have definitely recently been poo-pooing on your teams. Jaden Reed and Deebo Samuel. One's obviously younger, and I think he's in his second year. Deebo's obviously getting older, signed that big contract, and who knows if he's going to be with the 49ers. But they have definitely let you down of late. Reed put up a goose this past week, and Deebo is just, I think he's been terrible. I think he's like wide receiver 50-something this whole year. So what are you guys doing with these guys? Because going into the season and even at midpoint of the season, these were guys who held a decent amount of value.
Yeah, I was debating putting Jaden Reed on this, putting him up for discussion myself as part of this conversation.
I love Reed, but man,
it's tough. It's tough because his value right now is not crazy high. And it just like he's a frustrating guy to own because because there's so many guys in that offense, and like no one of their pass catchers is prioritized over any of the others in terms of targets and whatnot. Like there'll be a Christian Watson week, and then there'll be a Tucker Kraft week, and then there'll be a Dontavian Wicks week, and then there'll be a Jaden Reed week, and it's just like totally fucking random. So it's extremely frustrating, and for that reason, I would probably not be looking to acquire him. But I don't know that I'd be trying to sell him now either because his value is low. And same thing for Deebo. Like I think you're kind of just stuck holding both of these guys and hoping that they turn it around a little bit to prop the value up, and then you probably try to offload them then.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've talked about it before. The Packers wide receivers, it's just tough because you don't know who's going to get the ball every week. I mean, there seems to be no true wide receiver one there week to week, and that's tough for fantasy purposes. So I do still think Reed holds some value, and depending on what someone would give him up for, I would potentially maybe go buy him because eventually someone's probably got to establish themselves as the top wide receiver there. And if you're going to take a bet on someone that might do it, Reed's probably a guy that could do it. So, he put up a goose. People are very down on him after last week. The week before that, he had 18 points. Granted, he did only have 3 catches, but I still think there's some value there. Whereas Debo, to me, is trending more down, and the long-term value there, I think, has definitely tanked, and I wouldn't be looking to buy him. I'd almost be looking to sell him and see if you can still get some decent value because, like you said, he's not looking great as of late.
Yeah, he's looking slow. He's not explosive. He's not catching as many balls. I think there was, I don't know if you guys saw it online. He's like, someone's like, "What's wrong with Debo?" And he like tweeted like, "There's nothing wrong. I just need more opportunities." And then someone responded like, "Debo is leading the team in drop passes." Things like you're getting all the opportunities you can get, dude. You're dropping them. Reed is tricky. I think I would still look to potentially acquire Reed because I think the value is so low, and where it's different than Debo looks like he may be losing the explosiveness. Reed is so explosive. It's just not consistent. Like he's not on the field enough. He's like, I think he's only like 50-60% snaps.
That's the thing. Yeah, I was going to say the last game he was on the field for 50% of the time.
Yeah.
The game before that, 67, 50 before that, 57. Like he's only playing half the game, and that's the problem with this situation there.
And it's targets, but like usually when he gets targets, he's like been good. He's just not getting. I don't get like I know Josh Jacobs has been great and it's been a big factor of it. He's running a ton of the plays there, but yeah, it's just so frustrating because he seems honestly like the best wide receiver. Like I don't know why they keep relying so much on Watson and Wicks. They're great situational field stretchers, but usually when the ball's in Reed's hands, good things happen, and it just gets game scripted out. And he's not. And I can't tell you how many times because I've had him, and I'm like, all right, big play, I need a Reed here, and I'm looking at him like he's not even damn huddle. Where is this guy, man? What is going on? And, I've watched so many Packer games because of it. It drives me nuts. I'm like, he's not even. Wicks is on. Who is 13? I need 11. What is happening here?
Yeah.
So, I know. And the thing is, Dobbs hasn't even been in the last couple of games, so it's like now he's coming back.
And Dobbs is an every down player, so like it's frustrating. I would still look because I do think eventually the talent will rise to the top, and I think he is the most talented wide receiver. But the usage is killing me, and it's just infuriating to watch.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
The next pack is it's going to be a 3-pack of players that their value was pretty low going either into the season or even mid-season was real low. You honestly were starting to think that maybe these were never going to be that useful of wide receiver assets, but have turned it on of late. And I'm talking about Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and Jordan Addison. So what are you doing with this threesome?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think that it is quite insulting to Jordan Addison to
with Jerry Jeudy and
group him. Yeah,
I had JSN in this group, but JSN seemed even too high. JSN and Jordan Addison are closer to me than they are to Jerry Jeudy.
I mean, and it's not exactly from a talent standpoint. Oh, it's a little bit from a talent standpoint, but it's more so like Jordan Addison's only a second-year receiver. And he's been productive both years in the league, whereas both Jeudy and Moore have been in the league for several years, and they've stunk most of the time they've been in the league.
But Jordan Addison, I would say midway through the season, you thought were trending the Elijah Moore Jeudy package.
Yes, for sure.
He did nothing up until 3 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, he was out, and he had his own I think he had a DUI, and he had some problems. I used to be higher on Jeudy when he first came into the league. I spent a lot of time owning Elijah Moore in Dynasty leagues when he was on the Jets. Yeah. I personally think that it is just all smoke and mirrors right now with the Jameis situation. Like Jameis just breathes fantasy value onto whatever offense that he's a part of, regardless of who's on it.
So that was going to be my comment. I feel like Jeudy and Moore, it's all quarterback dependent. Like they're hot right now because Jameis is throwing the ball. Who knows who their quarterback's going to be next year, and if it's not Jameis, they're ready to tank.
So both of because when I'm watching games, they are getting open a lot more. So it's Jameis, yes, but I think it's the fact that it's not Watson is the bigger thing than it being Jameis. But I've been a Judy hater, and I think everyone knows that. I've bought him recently in redraft, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. But it's also the way they're deploying him more, getting him moving, and that's why I think he's been useful. Like he's going downfield more. He was always fast. He wasn't like a great route runner, but he's fast and getting him in motion and putting him in the right spots. But you need someone who can throw the ball downfield and hit him. That's where Jameis comes in. Watson can't do that for shit. So I think Judy, if he found like a good play call, and it is funny, like players being, especially wide receivers, being deployed in the right way for their skill sets is so important to their value. Judy finally got that. Now he needed someone who can hit him that way. Elijah Moore, honestly, has been he's had like double digit targets, I think, multiple times the past like couple games, and he is open a lot. So like, not someone I would rely, but I think for someone who I thought was like toast dead in the water is value. I think he's like someone you could like. We have 3 flex on top of 2 wide receivers. I think I could easily be putting him in as like that 5th flex and be okay with that going into next year. I would toss like a third at Elijah Moore, maybe like a late third. See where the draft's went, but I would maybe toss that out of him. Judy, though, I think I've risen to the point where like I think he'll be a solid wide receiver too, but I just the Browns can't be starting Watson next year. I like you just keep him as the most expensive backup. You cannot start that guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it depends on. I don't think they can start him either, and if they don't, then I like Judy more, but I wouldn't go out and buy him right now.
Yeah. And then
Yeah, I mean, I would probably sell both. But for dynasty purposes, like I have more in a dynasty and I'm pleasantly surprised at what's going on now. But even like I've been kind of like gun shy even to put him in my lineup because I mean, and part of that is also like been hurt in the past, so it's hard to like get over that. But like, so we're like, just this is just like Fantasy Pros Dynasty wide receiver real time rankings. Like, if I'm just naming a couple guys that are in the neighborhood of Jerry Jeudy right now, who would you rather have, Jerry Jeudy or Juwan Jennings?
Oh, Juwan Jennings. I actually think Juwan Jennings is going to be the wide receiver 1 for that team next year.
Jerry Jeudy or DeAndre Hopkins?
Judy.
Yeah, Judy, just because of Hopkins' age.
Jerry Jeudy or Romeo Dobbs?
Judy. I think there's more upside.
I'd say that one's close. I have Dobbs, so I'll say him.
You guys are all Jerry Jeudy or Amari Cooper?
Amari Cooper.
Probably good Judy.
Yeah, it's tough. Those are so like that. They're all like in the same tier. I was just kind of picking above and below, but like, yeah, I mean, you know, he's definitely an interesting guy.
He's definitely, I was fully out, but he is interesting now. I think it's the right way to phrase it. And then I'll jump into the last one. It's 2 wide receivers who are done or likely done for the year. Curious how you're going to handle them in the offseason. Brandon Ayuk and is it Christian Olave? Yeah, this is difficult because I own both these guys in many places and I don't know what to do.
I would not go buy Olave. I feel like people have been waiting for this massive breakout from him for 2 years now, and it hasn't happened. I feel like if you have him, you got to wait and see if you get it. I don't know. I wouldn't go buy him personally.
Yeah, like for Olave, it's a combination now. First, it was just expectations and slightly underperforming and just wondering when he's like finally going to hit. And now it's the fact that he's had like 4 wicked concussions in 12 months. And, you know, like there's been a lot of instances where he's been floated out to me in trades in both redraft and Dynasty where I've balked at acquiring him because I mean, maybe it's to a fault, but like I'm a little like gun shy about going for these guys with concussion history because like one day they could just like decide they're going to stop playing and that's the end of it. And like you said, right, like Olave's value is inflated by like the promise of him being more than he's actually been on the field. So the combination of those things, I think, make him a tough buy right now. if you could actually sell him to somebody who's willing to overlook the concerns about the medical history, that's probably what you're trying to do. Either that or like a similar situation where you're just holding, and if he starts off next year strong, then maybe at that point you look to capitalize. If you're out, if you share the same concerns, I don't know. Like, what, Dave? Where do you stand?
I'm not as concerned. So I think he wants to play, but I think it's smart that I honestly am happy he's not playing the rest of the year because I feel like that improves his chances of continuing to play long term just by not playing. Because it's not just the number of concussions; it's the time between concussions. That's also a concern. So if he got another one this year, like that would be code red. Um, Hopefully, he doesn't get one next year, but I don't think it'll be as serious if it's like the back half of next year and there was like enough time to pass. But again, hopefully, nothing happens there. So I'm not fully out on there, but that's also to say I'm fully aware there is risk with him with the concussion. It's not. It's like definitely something you have to think about when you have him, where other players is not a concern. And like this year, he was actually starting to perform better than like last year. So like that's where like I have more confidence in him reaching that potential because you were starting to see it and like he was stepping up and then obviously got hurt. And it was weird this year because then like Carr got hurt and then get back to you didn't when Carr was coming back, he started to get that production again. So I'm not worried that he can't fulfill the promise, but the injury is starting to become an issue because the quarterback situation probably not going to be great next year again. And
that was going to be my other comment.
and if
he also doesn't have a good quarterback.
That's the issue, and like it's always a mess there. So like and they're not going to improve it next year, I don't think either. So I mean I have him. I think it's just a hold situation. I just don't see any scenario where like selling him makes any sense, unless again you're packaging it and like you have other assets and you can like consolidate talent into a different spot with like. But I find that a hard deal to make at this point. Ayuk is the one that's more concerning for me because he was going into the season as like a top 10 wide receiver. Was hurt now, but before that was doo doo. And I honestly do think Juwan Jennings looks legit, and he was doing that. It wasn't just because no one else was on the field. He did it with Ayuk. He's done it with Debo. He's done it with everyone on the field. And Brock Purdy loves this guy. He's like easily his number one go-to, most reliable receiver. When they need a big down, they look at Juwan Jennings. So, and that's not to say that Ayuk can't have a role as well with that, but I don't think Jennings goes away next year. Where I think you were potentially reading the tea leaves that maybe Debo's gone and Ayuk's going to get like a 30% plus target share. I find that harder and harder to believe for Ayuk even when he's healthy next year now. But I don't know where you guys are.
Yeah, I definitely would not pay top dollar for Ayuk. I think it's pretty risky, and I do agree with you. I don't think he's automatically the wide receiver one there, even with Debo gone. So personally, yeah, I would almost try to sell him if anything.
Between the two, I would rather have Ayuk. I think, and that's like a diversity of takes from us, which is, I just feel that he's shown more with his highs on the field have been significantly higher than Chris Olave's, and he doesn't have the medical concerns, and he's in a more explosive offense with a better play caller and a better quarterback. So it just feels like, like for me personally, I'd rather have Ayuk. Let me just throw out there one more, right? Who would you rather have between Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, and T. Higgins, Dave?
Rank them?
Yeah, let's rank them in Dynasty.
Olave, Higgins, Ayuk, I think.
I think I'm probably Higgins. No, I can't.
You can't go Higgins first.
I can't go Higgins one. It's probably Ayuk,
Olave,
Higgins.
Yeah, I'm with Joe. I think I would go Ayuk over Olave. I'm pretty out on Olave at this point. I don't know. I don't see him turning it around.
I just have such concerns with because he was. I don't know. The vibes around Ayuk were just bad in the preseason. Even at contract, he was like pissing off the coaches. I don't know. I feel like he should be so good, but I'm like really getting concerned about Ayuk and if he's going to just be a dud after his contract. So that's why I have him lower. But Olave to me is the most talented right now of those players. Like if they were all healthy, I think Olave is the best. It's just the concussions for Olave, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but that's not a nothing thing. I should also say.
yeah, it's the main thing.
But with that, obviously that's in the off season. But before the off season, we got the playoffs in our league. Our playoffs are kicking off. I do want to congratulate the Mike Williams for getting the first overall seed in our league. But with that, I think it'd be fun if all of us kind of gave our playoff picks in our league on how we think these playoffs are going to go. I'll go first since I'm not in it. And I know you guys both have a little vested interest going on there. So in the first round, Ryan, I'm going to have you beating Clark Sauce. And unfortunately, Joe, I'm going to have Scott beating you. I do think there's a few major advantages you've had, but when I'm looking at those flexes, I think the difference comes there. I think Scott has a few deeper options there, but I think it will be close. After that, I got Wilk over the league champs, Mike Caffer and Mike Williams, and then Scott actually overtaking defending champ Schluter in another powerhouse battle. And I actually have Scott winning it all over Wilk, but it will be close.
How close, Dave? How close?
It'll be close. I just think Scott's team is like starting to get going, and honestly, I think he's just got the good vibes. He's been down a lot of what happened last year, barely got in this year, but those are teams that are the most dangerous.
I'm actually going to jump in because I have the same bracket with the exception of I have Wilk over Scott in the championship match. So
all right.
I think it's going to be on the back of Kyler and Josh Allen and Trey McBride.
Let's hope
he finally gets his touchdowns in that.
Yeah. But yeah, the rest of mine bracket was all the same, and it just feels like the flexes are going to be the downfall this week against Scott. He's got a deep team, but we'll see if my big guys are going to have to come to play. And if I get another 40 spot from Jamar Chase, then maybe I can compete. But we'll see.
Yeah, so that's the thing, Joe. I'm going to spice it up a little bit. So last year I picked Schluter to win it all, and he did win it all. So this year I have to obviously say that my team is going to go all the way because it worked out last year.
Speak it into existence.
I'm going to speak it into existence and say we're going to win over the Clark Sauce. But Joe, I'm actually going to say you're going to take down Team Scott Rapizzotti just because I like the fact that you have a couple guys that could go for like 30, 40 points. And I could see you taking the victory there. And then I'm going to give us the win over the Mikes. And then if you get past Scott, I'm actually going to say that Joe takes down Schluter because I just think Schluter's team's trending a little bit in the wrong direction right now. And I could kind of see a division rivalry rematch of myself and Joe. Maybe I'm just hoping for a podcast championship. I don't know, but I could see it happening.
My team definitely appreciates the support, and my team is fresh off a smacking of Schluter's team's booty cheeks this past weekend. So we're ready to. We're encouraged that we have it in us to take him down.
Yeah, I think Jamar Chase is on fire right now. I think he's going to keep it going, and I like your quarterbacks, so I could see you pulling it out.
He definitely has the firepower, so that's for sure.
Yeah.
What about the toilet bowl, the one that I'm hoping to be, in the championship with when you guys are in yours, so we could all be in something.
Yeah. So for my toilet bowl, I actually have Dave in the championship against Harry and Dan, and I have Harry and Dan taking down the winning side.
Of course, they do have more firepower than I do.
Canelos over Adam, BP over the Rosinskis, and then you over BP, Dirty Work over Canelos, and then Dirty Work and Dan DaCosta taking down the toilet bowl championship.
So I had the same as Joe to start, and then I switched the semis. I have Canelos over Dirty Work and BP over Dave, and then I have Canelos to defend his title.
Defending toilet champ.
And we'll get into that in a second, but I just, so everyone sees what I have. I have Canelos over Adam too. I think everyone has that. I actually have the Brzezinski's bros over BP. And then I have Harry and Dan being Canales, which I think was I think, Joe, you had that one. And then
Yep.
I'm going to have B beating the Brzezinskis. But, of course, if I'm in championship, I am not giving it to Harry and Dan. I'm holding myself. Get out of here. I am spanking that booty. I'm going to be in the championship and win that $50. But that leads me into the final thing. We have the final results of our highest score of the year, weekly score, and the lowest score of the year. So the highest score goes to Clark Sauce with a week 11 score of 207.02. But the lowest score, and just a reminder in our league, if you are the lowest score of any week in the year, you have to fund basically the Toilet Bowl Championship winnings of $50 for it. So Canales could potentially be funding himself if he wins it all, as I think Ryan had predicted. But I'm expecting myself to reap that benefit. And Canales in week 7 had a low score of 64.52. So quite the range we had here from 65 to 207 in the league. But yeah, congrats to the winners and losers there. But before we part, any final thoughts going into the playoff weeks?
No, props to Clark Sauce for turning it around, and they were pretty low in the power rankings to start the season. Didn't start off the season particularly strong either, and have just been on an absolute tear lately, and are definitely a very formidable team going into the playoffs. So it's definitely a solid performance by them.
Yeah, I agree. I had to pick myself, but definitely very worried playing them week 1. I feel like, or playoffs week 1. I feel like they really have the momentum right now.
They're hot right now.
Turned it around.
Let's just remind, last year they had the low score of 33.8, and they started off this year with the first low score too in week 1, and I think they were the second highest score potentially in the entire league this year. So quite the turnaround there. So never give up, keep fighting. Good to see there. But with that, good luck to everyone in the playoffs. It's going to be very calm for those with the bye and those in the toilet bowl, because who cares? Well, good luck, teams.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the NSFW Dynasty podcast. Tune in next time